Our Bible word is Psalm 40 verse 5. Many, O Lord, my God, are your wonderful works which you have done, and your thoughts towards us cannot be recounted to you in order. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. So this psalm, it's referred to by scholars as a royal liturgy of supplication. In other words, it's a king. He comes to God and he performs a liturgy. In other words, he brings sacrifices and he brings his prayer and to supplicate God, because the king is in need, he's in trouble, and he needs God's help. So the psalm, it consists of the following portions. Verses 1 to 10 consists of a thanksgiving. That's where the king, he brings thanks to God, and then there's a specific prayer that's in verse 11, and then there's also a lament over a coming crisis that's spoken of in verses 12 to 16, and then there's a concluding prayer in verses 17. So verses 1 to 10, this is a form of thanksgiving. Here the psalmist or the king, he praises God for the help that he's experienced in the past. So it's a bit like making God's heart soft and praising God and say, God, you helped me with this. Praise your name, you helped me for that. And then comes the transition, says, God, I need your help now. So it's making God's heart soft. And the real reason for the psalm we actually find in verses 11. It says there, do not withhold your tender mercies from me, O Lord. Let your loving kindness and your truth continually preserve me. So this is a plea for help. So the thanksgiving portion, that's verses 1 to 10. There, the king would say, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry. He also brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my steps. So yeah, these are metaphors. The king, previously he was in dire trouble, probably referring to a military battle or situation where he was facing defeat or death. But God rescued him from that situation. And he also encourages others, trust the Lord, he will help you, etc. And if we come now to our Bible verse, he commemorates these past acts of deliverance. If you go to verse 5, many, O Lord my God, are your wonderful works which you have done, and your thoughts towards us cannot be recounted to you in order. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. So he's remembering these past deeds of help that God has given him. God has delivered him from this military defeat and times of anxiety he has experienced in the past. And now the king also speaks of sacrifices and offerings. It may sound like as if he didn't want to make them, or it's not necessary to make them, but it's part of his duty as a king to bring this. So he also, in a sense, corrects himself in these verses. If we go to verse 6, it says, sacrifice and offering you did not desire. My ears you have opened. So in other words, God open his understanding to what is God's will. In verse 7, then I said, also verse 6, burnt offerings and sin offering you did not require. Then I said, behold, I come. So in other words, now I come, I will come before my duties as a king. I will bring my sacrifices and offerings. Because this is part of the liturgy of the king as he is approaching the temple. And because this is a royal liturgy of supplication. The king comes because he's imploring God, help me. Eventually, that's what the psalm is really about. And in verses 7 it also says, in the scroll of the book it is written of me. And yeah, the king, or the psalmist, refers back to what's written in Deuteronomy. If you go to Deuteronomy 17, verses 14 to 20, you'll see there some instructions are given to the king, how he should behave. Amongst other things, he mustn't multiply his wives, he mustn't multiply his silver and gold and horses, etc. He must be a righteous king. who must look after his people. And also two features of the king, there's also God's fear of God and humbleness. If we go to Deuteronomy 17 verses 19 to 20, it says there, "And it shall be with him," that's the king now, "and he shall read it all the days of his life." This is now referring to this law of Deuteronomy, including the sacrifices, etc., that must be brought to God. "And he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law and his statutes." So in other words, be obedient to what's written in the scroll. In other words, specifically Deuteronomy. And includes sacrifices and offerings that are brought to God. Then verse 20, it also says that his heart may not be lifted above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, and that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. So the king must behave properly. And it's written about the king here in the book of Deuteronomy. So this is also what the psalmist here in verses 7 specifically is referring to. He says, I know that, and I'm observing that. I'm bringing my sacrifices to you as part of this liturgy where I come to ask help from you. And of course then, he also says in verses 9 to 10, he publicly proclaimed God's help. He experienced God's help before. If you go there in verse 9, "I've proclaimed the good news of righteousness in the great assembly. Indeed, I do not restrain my lips, O Lord, you yourself know." So he says, I've declared your help, your past help, to all the people. They know about it. But then we transition now also to the real reason, because now there's a coming crisis. And if we go there to verses 12 specifically, "For innumerable evils have surrounded me. My iniquities have overtaken me, so that I am not able to look up." So there are two reasons for this crisis. He's surrounded by enemies, and also because of his own sin, something he himself did wrong. It's probably also led to him being surrounded by these enemies. So this is a new coming crisis. That's the reason. That's why he's performing this royal liturgy of supplication. He needs God's help. He needs God's deliverance. And the king also expresses confidence in verses 14 to 15 that he will be helped. And of course, then we find the concluding prayer in verse 17. "But I am poor and needy, yet the Lord thinks upon me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, O my God." So it's urgent. His crisis is now. It's upon him. It's imminent. Do not delay, O my God. So this is the king. He's bringing the supplication. He's surrounded by enemies. Something that he has done himself has also contributed towards his predicament. And he comes to the king, to the temple, and he brings also sacrifices as a king should do. The king should fear the Lord. He should remain humble. He says, "This is who I am. My heart's disposition is right before you. My deeds are right before you because I bring these offerings and sacrifices to you." And he speaks of, "I brought praise to you. Thank you, God, for your help in the past. But also now I need you. There's this time of crisis. Please come, Lord. Do not delay." So it's a royal liturgy of supplication. This is the king coming to God, bringing thanks and praise to God, but also requesting help.